Hi everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another episode of this. So let's go ahead and get started. Last week we concluded with werewolf books. The episode before that was werewolf movies, and I found that a very dear friend was very triggered by my gall at professing my opinion that I like werewolves as my favorite monster. Don't worry, my very close second favorite is vampires, and we're going to talk about those today. We're going to start with movies. You know, it was really hard to narrow the list of movies down. Vampires seem to be a little more cinematically friendly than werewolves do. You don't have to do quite as many effects as you would with a werewolf. You can just get people and shove fake teeth in their noses, their mouths, and it's just a more attractive story, I think. So there were a lot of movies to choose from. I came up with 21. I was able to narrow it down there. The latest I get is 2014. I've seen a lot of the more recent vampire movies, and there's a reason why they're not on this list. I don't love every movie on this list, but I think that they're notable. That's kind of the point. I think they're movies everybody should watch. Of course, this is all subjective. It's art. There are movies on here that I know for a fact people hate, and there are movies on here that I'm very meh on, and I added them because I know they're very popular, because unlike some people, I have no problem being okay with people liking things that I don't. Now, before I get started, these are just vampire movies. We'll do Monster Mash ones later where it's like vampires versus werewolves. We will talk about Underworld and stuff like that. But also I want to point out the Twilight movies are not on this list. I don't know anything about them. The books, I was a little old when they came out and I never read them. The simple truth of it is that's a story and that's a series that's just not for me. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that I hate them, but we don't do Twilight hate here. I see a lot of hate for it, and I would just like to point out to some people that this series it had an audience, and there's a reason why it was a huge hit. It connected with people, and can we not make a joke of things that are mostly liked by women and teenage girls? Can we not do that? It's okay. If it's not for you, that's okay, but it's for them, and that doesn't mean it's a joke. Okay? All right. It wasn't for me. They're not on the list. I've never seen them. I've never read the books. I had no interest in it, and that's okay. I have no problem with it existing in my world. So, from what I could see, unless there is a silent movie that has gone missing, like our first werewolf movie, from what I could find, the first vampire movie is Nosferatu. It was made in 1922. This is a movie where it's kind of a miracle that it still exists. It's kind of a miracle that we can still watch it, because the Bram Stoker estate were fucking pissed off that this movie was made. And they did they almost snuffed it out of existence. They almost succeeded. And it is a miracle that we can see it now, and you should see it. It is very interesting visually, and I think it is worth your time to sit down and watch it. Next, we have good old Dracula starring Bela Lugosi, 1931. With these really, really old movies, I think there's a temptation to call them cheesy. And I have to disagree with that assertion. I have to disagree with calling it cheesy, because they're really not. They take themselves very seriously. And there was a lot of things that they just couldn't show. Like, you don't see Dracula with pointy teeth. You don't see Dracula actually bite anybody. There's this sort of cool, disdainful character in our monster in this movie that I do think it's worth your time. If you are a fan of vampires, you should watch this movie. Yeah. Next, we skip a decade and a half. 1958, Horror of Dracula. Now, this is Hammer Studios' take on the Dracula movie. And actually, this is a superior movie. This is a very, very good movie. This is one of the first movies where we get the scary, violent, screaming monster in our Dracula. He's not always this kind of smooth character who thinks all humans are beneath him because we're just food. He's that sometimes, but he's also just this kind of angry monster. And we've got the perfect foil. Like, Christopher Lee plays Dracula, and then we've got the perfect foil with Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. He's determined. Like, there's this scene where they are full on running. Dracula is fleeing Van Helsing, and Van Helsing, I mean, running after him. He is the lesser of the two characters in this. Peter Cushing is not a young man in this. He's easily a middle-aged man, and they are fighting. They are chasing each other. He is determined to kill this vampire, and it's really raw, and it's a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. You also get to see Christopher Lee fall down a hole when he didn't mean to, because they had so much stuff in his eyes to make them red. Because if you've ever read Dracula, one of the defining characteristics of Dracula when he's not in monster mode are his red eyes, and they do that to Christopher Lee, and it looks very uncomfortable, and the poor guy couldn't see half the time, so he falls down a hole. They kept it in because it matched the story, but he hurt himself. It's a great movie. Watch it. The next I want to talk about is another Hammer film called The Vampire Lovers. It was made in 1970. I did a little research on this, and everybody was talking about the 1983 movie The Hunger as the first sapphic vampire movie, meaning it's lesbian, and it is very overt. But I would say the first sapphic vampire movie is The Vampire Lovers. Did I say 1970? It was made in 1970. This movie is based off Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, which we'll talk about that next week. Fantastic book. There's more of a implied lesbian thing going on here. No, not in the movie. It's not implied. There's lesbian stuff going on. Carmilla prefers women. It is implied in the book, but it's implied heavily. Like, you can find it. It's not hard to find. And this is a fantastic movie. It's got Ingrid Pitt in it. If you watched any scary movies in the 70s at all, you know Ingrid Pitt, like a devastatingly beautiful woman. She plays Carmilla. They always put Peter Cushing as top billing in this, and he's in it for maybe 3 minutes. He's not in this movie. Fantastic movie, totally worth the watch. What do we have next? We're in the 80s now. I want to start, I did put a couple of vampire comedies in here just because some of them are funny. This is the lesser of the two. Once Bitten, made in 1985. This one stars a very young Jim Carrey. This movie has not aged well. There is a dance-off in this movie. There's a lot of talk about virgins in this movie, teenage virgins. It's very 1980s, but it's funny. If you can get around some of the bullshit, that like there's a homophobia in it, it didn't age well. A younger person would not sit down and enjoy this movie now. If you lived through some of this, you might be able to get something out of it. It's not a great movie. I have a fondness for it because I watched it as a kid. What do we have next? Also made in 1985 is a much better movie, graphics and otherwise, Fright Night. This is my favorite vampire movie. That is it. I got to meet the cast a few years ago at a convention, and it made my fucking day. I've got the movie poster, and they all signed it. This is my favorite vampire movie. The gentle nudging that they do at the Hammer Studio vampire movies. It's lovingly done, but there is the Peter Vincent character. I love him so much. I love Roddy McDowall in this role. I just love this movie. I love the creature effects. These vampires have golden eyes when they've gone into monster mode. There's a bat in this movie that is so fucking weird looking. I love it. I love this movie. There is a death scene that is so disgusting. I mean, I used to watch this movie when I was a small child. I was born in 1983. This came out in 85. I was watching this movie before the 90s, and I would bawl when this death scene happened. And you know which one I'm talking about. It's long and drawn out, and it is sad. It's meant to be sad. And, so they remade this movie in 2011, and I watched it. And it was very clear this was not for me. It just wasn't for me. I know it's got a big fan base. It's on all the lists, which is fine. Like, I'm kind of disappointed I didn't love it because, ooh, Colin Farrell as a sexy vampire, that works. Like, woo. But I kind of didn't really like what they did to the Peter Vincent character. I get it. It was an update, and it was creative. I get it. It just wasn't for me. But if you like it, go watch it. I won't watch it with you, but go have fun. Here's another funny one, and this is the better of the funny ones I'm going to talk about. My Best Friend is a Vampire, made in 1987. This movie is cheese. It is having fun with itself. It is having fun with the vampire creature, and it's just fun. It is a light, fun movie. There's a butcher who's in the know and provides the vampires with pig blood so that they don't have to kill anybody. It's a silly movie. If you can find it, go watch it. Also in 87, we get The Lost Boys. It is not the perfect movie. It's close. But this is the perfect cast. This cast working together, doing the parts they got, they are so fucking perfect for the roles that they got. I love this movie. I kind of wish they didn't keep playing that song. Is it called Cry Little Sister? Doesn't matter. They keep playing it over and over again. I got too much of it. But oh my god, this movie is so good. And oh my god, the cast is so amazing. I love Diane Wiest as the mom in this because she's so sweet and soft-spoken. And she's got kind of they're teenage boys, but they're kind of idiots too. And she's doing her best. She's a single mom. She's just relocated herself and her kids to go live with her dad. And this is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen this movie and you thought for some odd reason there was a reason to it, I can assure you there isn't. If you like vampires, this is a movie you have to watch. It needs to be required. One of the best. What do we have next? Okay. 1991 came this movie, Children of the Night. There was a time in the early, maybe up to the mid-90s, where certain cable channels would only play kind of B-level movies. And the Movie Channel was one of those. I don't think it's that way anymore. It's been a while since I've had the Movie Channel, but in this time, if you wanted to watch kind of sleazy B-grade movies, you watched them on the Movie Channel. And Saturday nights was when they would play the real, like, crazy ass scary movies. And Children of the Night is one of them. I've talked about this movie on other podcasts. I think I've talked about this movie on other videos. I can't find it anywhere, which is the problem, because this movie is balls to the wall fucking crazy. When I tell you that there are vampires in the vampires, in order to escape sunlight, they sleep underwater. And for some reason, that really doesn't make any sense, but you don't want to think too much with this movie. They barf up their lungs, and the lungs kind of float on top of the water so they breathe, which again makes no sense, because that's not the part of you that draws the air. Like, you need holes, but it doesn't matter. You get to watch vampires barf up their lungs in this movie, and that's not even the start of it. This is another movie that's having a good time. It's not taking itself too seriously all the time. There's a great monster in it. Like, the lead vampire is a scary guy. It's a good movie. It's just, I can't find it anywhere. Next, we gotta talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula, made in 1992. I know I've made a video where I've talked about this one. This is a movie that had a lot of really good ideas. There's a lot of really great visuals in this movie. I just think it has more value as an accidental comedy than it does as a horror movie. Because it's not a horror movie. It's funny. There are 2 actors in this movie, 3 actors actually, who I love. I love Keanu Reeves. I love Winona Ryder. And I love Anthony Hopkins. Oh my god, there's so much overacting in this movie. which I think probably comes from casting Gary Oldman as the lead. Gary Oldman is one of those character actors who makes side characters memorable because he overdoes it a little bit. And putting him in the lead was just, I mean, great creature work, great visuals. It's just the actors all kind of weren't on their A game in this. They all kind of sucked. I watch this movie every chance I get, though. I do enjoy watching it, but I laugh a lot, and they didn't mean for me to be laughing. Next, we have 1994, Interview with the Vampire. Now, I'm adding this one. We will talk about the Anne Rice books next week, and I mean, I'm a fan. I have no time for people who dismiss them, but these are not horror stories, and this is not a horror movie. It is a vampire movie, but it's not scary. It is, however, a beautiful, stylish movie. It is, this is a movie I will sit and watch anytime. I think Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are magnificent in this. This is some of their best work. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of this movie. I'm a fan of everything they did. The music, the shots that they did, the passage of time, like, you can feel the echo of ages past in this movie. They did such a good job telling the story. Love it. 1995, Vampire in Brooklyn. This is the Eddie Murphy vampire movie. It has Angela Bassett in it. This is a great vampire movie. This is a great monster movie, full stop. I think the effects were great. I love the concept of the ghouls. I love the concept of the shape-shifting vampire. I love the scheming. I love it all. I think this is a fantastic vampire movie, and I love it. 1996, From Dusk Till Dawn. Now, later on this list, I'm going to tell you that I don't like swarming vampires, usually, except when they're stripper vampires in Mexico. This is probably one of my top 5 all-time favorite vampire movies. It is perfection. We've got George Clooney at his absolute best. George Clooney is one of those actors, I don't like him as a serious actor. George Clooney has quirks as an actor that I find really annoying, but they all work as his character of Seth Gecko in this. It's just one of those things that comes along perfectly. It's kind of like with Ryan Reynolds. I think Ryan Reynolds is fucking annoying unless he's playing Deadpool. For some odd reason, Deadpool took all those fucking quirks that he does that makes him annoying and made them perfect. That's kind of the way it works with George Clooney in this. I mean, we've got a great cast of characters. Anyway, Harvey Keitel, are you kidding me? But yes, fantastic movie. 1998, Blade. I feel like this is a movie that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is weird because this movie, I remember when it came out, I went into the theaters and saw it. I remember this movie coming out. I've seen this movie like 20 times. I'm not even kidding. I love this movie. Now, it's my favorite of the trilogy. I really didn't like the third one. And the second one, it's just okay to me. I really like this first one. I really like the character of Blade. I think Wesley Snipes did a fan-fucking-tastic job. Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost, fantastic villain. I just think this is a really good movie. 1998, also, John Carpenter's Vampires. This is just a good monster movie. And I hate to say it because he's such a douche waffle. James Woods makes this movie. James Woods, when he's on, is such a fucking amazing actor. And he's amazing in this. James Woods is not a big man. He is a little guy. His thing comes from just being able to run his mouth. And boy, does he in this movie. He actually is shit-talking a vampire as it's combusting and dying in this movie. It's so much fun. Great monster movie. Great fun monster movie. The year 2000, we get Shadow of the Vampire. Shadow of the Vampire is that movie with Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich, where it's basically a fictional telling of the making of 1922's Nosferatu, except instead of an actor playing Count Orlok, it is an actual vampire who's obsessed with the lead actress. This movie's so weird, and it's funny and it's creepy. Fantastic movie. I love this movie. I was so confused the first time I watched it because it was like, what? But once you get to the end and you understand what's going on, it's a great movie. What do we have next? We did Shadow of the Vampire. 2007, 30 Days of Night. Now this is swarming vampire movie in Alaska where we get long nights. We get continuous night, no daytime at all. Swarming vampires. But this is actually an okay movie. I wouldn't say it's great. This isn't a movie I would sit and watch any old time, but it is a good movie. It's very dark, and it's got kind of a devastating ending, kind of, but it works. If it had had a happy ending, it would have been bullshit. Like this is a good movie. I recommend it. 2008, Let the Right One In. This is the Swedish version. I think they made an American version. The Swedish version, this is a subtle vampire movie, very subtle, and yet it's creepy as hell. It's heavy. It's a heavy movie, and there are, like, when you finally get to the bad scenes, to the horror scenes, it's very effective because of the light touch employed by the movie makers to make it. I think this is a fantastic movie. 2010, Daybreakers. We get asshole vampires in this movie. This is the movie. It has Sam Neill, it has Ethan Hawke, and another Willem Dafoe movie. Vampires are running everything. There was some sort of virus that made everybody into vampires, and they can only subsist on human blood. And they've got like farms of humans where they're kind of like vacuum sealed, and they're drawing blood for them, but it's running out. And they think they've found a synthetic version of human blood, and but these vampires are just kind of mean, sadistic assholes. It's a good movie. It's a very good movie. 2012, Byzantium. This is a weird one. The same guy who made Interview with the Vampire made Byzantium, and this is another movie where it isn't subtle, not at all, but it's different. It's a very different telling of the vampire story, and it's really, really good. This is another one. I don't see this one making lists, but it's a really good movie. Kind of a girl power movie, kind of, but it's a very good movie. Very much recommended. And last, but not least, is 2014's What We Do in the Shadows. I know I said I wouldn't do a monster mashup. I know there are werewolves, not swearwolves in this movie, but it is mostly a vampire story. And I just love this movie. How could you not? I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the show, What We Do in the Shadows. I watched the first season and found myself kind of bored. But the movie, I adore the movie. I just think, I love these guys. I love Taika Waititi. I think this movie's so fucking funny because it's absurd. They take scenes and tropes from other vampire movies and make them funny. And it's just, if you haven't watched this movie, please do. It's so funny. And that'll be it for the vampire movies today. What are your favorite vampire movies? What is your favorite vampire kind of trope? Do you like the ones that can do the daywalkers? Do you like the ones that are just kind of dead, mindless monsters? I mean, I did leave kind of a big movie off of this list, and it's just because, like, there were movies I had a hard time with. It took me a long time to make this damn list. I didn't put Salem's Lot on here, and I'm kind of doubting that decision, because I do like that movie, the old one, not the remake that they did. That remake sucked, goddamn. But that's a creepy vampire. Even though in the books he's different. I will talk about the book next week. That one cannot be left off the list. But I mean, what are your favorite kinds of vampires? What's your favorite vampire movie? Do you like vampires? Or where do they stack in your hierarchy of horror monsters? Do they make the top? Do they make the top of the list? Obviously, I'm not alone in my love for werewolves, but I think we might have a few more people that love vampires too. So that'll be it for me. We will talk again next week. We'll be talking vampire books. It's going to be hard to whittle that one down to 22, but I will do it. I will find my zen and I will get there, and that'll be it for me. So thank you for being here. I hope the world is treating you well, and I will see you next week. Bye. Turn off. Fuck this clicker. Seriously?